Two-sided marketplaces are a great way to resolve supply and demand inefficiencies. There is such high demand for great programmers, but there is only a limited supply. So why would it make sense for a great developer to use a terrible tool like a job search engine? That's why I love Hired.com. Developers can sign up at Hired.com/softwareengineeringdaily and be connected with 5 great job opportunities at companies like Stripe, Uber, and Facebook. If you're a developer, you shouldn't settle for a mediocre job. And I know this from personal experience. It will stunt your career growth. Hired will give you a $2,000 bonus if you find a job. And if you go to hired.com/softwareengineeringdaily, you will get an additional $2,000. It costs you nothing to try it out, and it's a fun process. I urge you to try it out. Soylent is a drinkable food substitute designed by software engineers. John Coogan is the CTO of Soylent and also the co-founder. John, welcome to Software Engineering Daily.
Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
For people who don't know, what is Soylent?
So Soylent right now is the easiest healthy meal in the galaxy. We focus on 3 core tenets, being healthy, affordable, and convenient. So we've designed the nutritional profile to be extremely balanced. It's not designed explicitly for weight loss or weight gain. It's more just something to be completely healthy and keep you going, regardless of what activity you're pursuing. We design the ingredients to be extremely healthy, but also affordable. The latest product is available for about $2.40 per meal. And it's also extremely convenient since it comes pre-bottled now, shipped straight to your door. You just kind of put it in the fridge, open it up, and drink it, and you're satiated.
This show is typically about software engineering, but I suspect that there's a large percentage of Soylent users who are actually software engineers. Why is Soylent and the culture around it so appealing to engineers?
I think it's a few things. First, we take a very aggressive approach to open source. We facilitate not just publishing our ingredients and recipes. We actually have promoted a DIY make your own Soylent tool where you can aggregate different nutritional profiles and pick ingredients that fit your specific lifestyle. So if you, for example, want to make a high protein version, we help facilitate that. And we're really about growing the community and approaching food from a software engineering mindset.
Are you trying to replace food altogether?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, we merely see Soylent as the nutritional equivalent of water, something that should be widely available, extremely convenient, keep you going, essential to your life, but not replace anything, any meal that you enjoy or want to indulge in, as long as that's in moderation.
So how is Soylent different from things like Slim Fast and other meal replacement supplements that we've seen in the past? Sure.
So there's a few ways. First, we've taken a much more thorough look at the ingredients required to keep the human body healthy on a daily basis. Most of those, many other products are targeted at a specific nutritional outcome like weight loss or muscle gain. There really isn't anything for somebody who's just maybe going to work and doesn't want to have to wake up an extra hour early to cook breakfast, or maybe can't afford to go out to a nice restaurant for dinner, maybe just wants to grab something quick. So we really see our product as being different in that we focus on being healthy, convenient, and affordable.
And a lot of the discussions that we have on the show are about integrating different pieces of software. Soylent seems more about the integration of external chemicals and the way that our human body functions. And then along the way, there's all kinds of debugging in that integration process. What is the difference between debugging our bodies and the things we put into it versus debugging our code and debugging our engineering technologies?
Sure. Well, I think since we didn't ourselves design the human body, it's a lot more complex. But
we use external APIs all the time.
Absolutely. And fundamentally, you can look at the human body as an input and output function. You take in calories, you expend calories. And if you run a deficit of calories, you'll most likely lose weight. If you consume too many more calories than what you're burning, you'll eventually gain weight. And there's been a whole lot of progress in calorie tracking in the sense of keep your phone in your pocket, understand how many calories you're burning as a rough proxy for how much you're moving. There really haven't been as many initiatives towards understanding what you're putting into your body. So there are a lot of great tracking apps where you can put a detailed profile together and track every nutrient that goes into your body. But with Soylent, we feel like we've come up with a pretty healthy mix of ingredients that you can live reliably on.
So as you've been iterating on the process of designing the Soylent recipe, what are the problems that come up? What are the engineering difficulties in terms of just the ingredient preparation process?
There are a lot. So I'm not too involved in the actual product development anymore. That's kind of a separate team, and we've hired an amazing team of experts from food scientists with PhDs to biologists from Caltech, and I've been really impressed with what they're doing. But I actually don't understand the challenges that they face on a daily basis anymore. But I don't know. I just wouldn't really be able to kind of go through any deeper.
Sure. I mean, well, okay. So, but from a high level, at least, how at Soylent, like, how much credence does the company give to the conventional science of nutrition, or is most of the science that has been done kind of regarded skeptically? Or
I mean, we absolutely do stand on the shoulders of giants. There are some incredible research and progress that has been made into food science and understanding the human body. There is a lot of misinformation out there as well. So consumer education and really pushing people towards reliable sources of information, whether it's from the Institute of Medicine or the FDA or other kind of large bodies of scientists, has been a big challenge. But fortunately, we've been able to kind of facilitate that through our community and the internet, and the fact that it's such an open place that we can really create a forum for people to share reliable information amongst scientifically minded folks. And we think we've come to a very solid conclusion.
So we will get into the technical aspects of what you work with day to day as the CTO of Soylent, but I still want to get a better idea, and for people who are not familiar with Soylent, paint a bigger picture. How much Soylent do you drink yourself?
I drink a lot of it. So I am 6'8" and can burn around 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day, but depending on how physically active I am. And I probably consume about 2,000 calories of Soylent a day, which is a little confusing because 2,000 calories is also the FDA's recommended caloric intake for an average American male. But to put it simply, I consume about 2/3 of my calories from Soylent, and that typically comes in the form of what would normally be a breakfast and lunch, but instead of having maybe an 800-calorie breakfast and then stopping for an 800-calorie lunch or so, I'll just drink 400-calorie bottles of Soylent in our ready-to-drink form over the course of the day. So maybe one at 6 a.m., one at 8 a.m., one at 10 a.m., one at noon, and then kind of balance things out so that my metabolism is pretty even keel throughout the day.
So as you've been onboarding with Soylent and drinking an increasing amount of it for your diet, have you noticed any significant health changes, or what are the risks and the benefits of drinking Soylent?
I don't know. I worry about speaking anecdotally, merely because people tend to take anecdotes out of context in when it comes to these types of things. But I mean, I feel great. I'm healthy. I go see my doctor regularly and get blood panels done, and everything is normal in me. We're doing a lot more studies to kind of quantify the effects of this on all sorts of different blood markers and stuff, and we should have some exciting results coming out. Nothing that I can talk about yet, but
your gut biome checked.
Yeah. We did a partnership with uBiome to collect some microbiome data, and it's still early days though before we can get to anything that's really solid.
Okay, interesting.
In terms of findings that we feel would stand up in a peer-reviewed journal, for example.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately where we want to go, which I think does set us apart from other food companies, where the goal is really to get to a claim that you can defend in court. We want to defend our claims in scientific journals, really.
Yeah, and I guess it is tough to. Well, it's not tough, but it's a process to move from the anecdotal beginnings of the N=1, where it was just Rob blogging, and when I was in college, I was following his blog about Soylent, and then I was making my own a little bit, and sure. I found the process pretty fun and interesting. It didn't feel completely safe for me because I was like mixing chemicals in my kitchen, and like sometimes I put a little too much sulfur, and you're like, oops, like that. I don't know what that could result in, but
yeah, absolutely
not gonna mess around with it.
yeah. We've certainly come a long way from the kind of the DIY days of 3 years, or I guess almost 4 years ago now. We have a great director of or head of quality control now. We use all FDA certified facilities and follow a huge repertoire of good manufacturing practices, and it's been really just incredible seeing the company grow up and become what it has been. I've been really happy with it, with all of that.
So as CTO, was that part of your responsibility, like scaling up the output of Soylent production while maintaining quality, or is your role as CTO more to hire the right people that actually do that?
So as CTO, I do actually focus on software engineering in the company. The role of manufacturing and production is within our operations division. Another co-founder, Matt Cobble, runs that organization within Soylent, and has done a great job building a team that can liaise with suppliers and manufacturers as we grow. And that is, there have certainly been massive scaling problems or challenges, I suppose, dating back to our crowdfunding, where we raised a lot of money and then had to go and produce a great product very quickly. But fortunately, we did get the first batches out the door. We were able to iterate on the formula, which at that point was 1.0. We released 5 incremental revisions to that to get to 1.5, and we just announced a 2.0 product that now comes pre-bottled instead of as a powder.
So I'm really curious about the scaling process, because I mean I had crowdfunded around that time, and I was seeing the occasional updates, and it got delayed, and I was like, I know these guys are working hard on it, but I imagine things must have been totally crazy around that time. And so I'm curious, when you have a project that's taking off and you have a limited amount of people who are working on it, how do you narrow the roles and the responsibilities of the different people within the company? Like, how did you get relegated specifically to software engineering, and did that potentially bleed into other things where it became problematic and you didn't know what to focus on? Like, how did that process go early on?
Yeah, early on, I think, it felt like a very natural process. Everyone kind of, in the very, very early days, kind of everyone tackled every problem because they kind of came through one at a time. We'd have something like we need a crowdfunding site, and everyone would gather together to produce the best crowdfunding website we could, and we'd kind of divide up things based on skill set. So a certain group would go off and make the video, another group would be responsible for writing the copy, somebody who was capable would make sure the site worked and was hooked up to a payments platform effectively, and that's just kind of where my passion and interest lie. So naturally it was something that I wanted to develop and grow. And then as we started growing, we launched a subscription service where you can subscribe and receive Soylent every month. And once we knew that once we saw really the consumer behavior and the demand for regular shipments of Soylent, since it is a consumable good, we knew that we were going to have to build something fairly custom, since there weren't at that time, and I'm not aware of any at this point in time, really recurring billing solutions built around the shipment of physical products and the fulfillment of physical products. There are some great websites for one-off shipping products and just general e-commerce frameworks for that, but we wanted people to be able to come in and buy it one time and then come back and subscribe if they find themselves buying it repeatedly. And then we also wanted to layer on a whole host of other features around shipment tracking and really build kind of a world-class e-commerce experience, since we saw the web as a massive opportunity for the next kind of stage of growth for the food industry.
So Amazon does this for servers with AWS. It sounds like the infrastructure. So I guess FBA, the fulfillment by Amazon service, the totally different thing. I suppose that's not there yet, where you can spin up your own fulfillment process.
Yeah. There are a few services out there, and we use some of them. We've partnered with Shipwire to do the fulfillment section, and then we use Stripe for payments. But really, to be able to kind of bring all of these systems together, we needed a custom platform. So that's something where at the end of last year, we started investing in software engineering and bringing all of our data internally so we could start doing more analysis on the business, automating fulfillment so that we could grow from one person using spreadsheets to, instead of 10 people using spreadsheets, one person using an automated tool to manage the fulfillment process. And that kind of let us scale revenue and shipments disproportionately to headcount. So we were able to remain small as a company and move quickly while delivering more value for the customer.
So this is totally prototypical technology company problem, where you have one person or 10 people working on a solution that they've just hacked together through Excel.
Absolutely.
And they decide, okay, we need to figure out a better way to do this. What was that problem? Like, what were you tackling, and how did you approach it?
There were all sorts of problems.
Oh, no.
And we saw this as a really unique opportunity to build a new food company from the ground up with a technology first mindset, and build some really great tools. When we kind of surveyed other companies in the food industry, the larger organizations really had tools that they hated. Even some of the people that we eventually hired that came from larger organizations had to teach themselves VBA because their Excel sheets got so out of control that you have food scientists who are building software tools to make their lives easier, and that just seems like an odd separation of concerns. But so we saw a really great opportunity to kind of build a food company that takes technology seriously from the ground up, and have that be maybe our competitive advantage as we grow and scale. So there are a whole bunch of great anecdotes about ways that we started using technology to allow us to scale faster than we could have otherwise, given our limited budget and limited human resources. One in particular that comes to mind was the very first shipments of Soylent. So we had finally gotten the 1.0 powder bags produced. We sent them off to a fulfillment center that was the only one that we could really afford at the time, by the name of Heritage Paper in Northern California. And we were sending them Excel sheets of crowdfunding backer orders with a line item for what we wanted to send them, where we wanted to send it, what the weight of the package was, and then they would go and print the labels on it. And then they would manually send us a sheet of what they sent out for that day. So it was a huge mess because every day we would get a different format for a spreadsheet. I wouldn't have had a problem with it if it was standard, because I could have written a script that ingested that into a database and made it accessible. But every day, because somebody was doing it manually, we'd get completely different data. So it was impossible to really store or archive that tracking data. So what we did was we actually drove out to the fulfillment center, bought a laptop, a printer, and a Wi-Fi chip or a 4G LTE card, and hooked it up through a third-party shipping software so that we could remotely print labels from our office, and they would print and spill out onto the floor of the warehouse. So we basically just replaced everything that they were doing there with a system that just gave them labels, and they could just go and put that on the actual boxes and ship them out.
Oh, wow.
So not a lot of amazing code written there, but a solution that got us, leaps and bounds above where we were.
Yeah, I think you go into gruesome detail in this. There's an article called "How We Spent $500 on Tech to Ship $2.6 million of Soylent."
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there were some other anecdotes. What are the other? Give me a more another anecdote around the early logistical challenges of shipping Soylent and how you used software to ameliorate those problems.
Let me think. I'm not sure if I have anything handy.
Oh, okay.
I think in general, it's all underscored by our commitment to deliver an affordable product, which is very, very difficult in the early days. So with $3 million in revenue and product that we had to deliver, we had to make and order ingredients and assemble them and ship them all for less than that, or we would lose money. And we wanted to make sure that we were growing the business. So we really did have to find any opportunity and really seek out those cost-cutting measures to allow us to deliver on Rob's original vision of a healthier, cheaper, and easier alternative to what is otherwise available. That's very, very difficult for a startup in a physical space to deliver on a cost-competitive solution. Easier in software, where the variable cost is a little bit lower or typically negligible, but it was definitely the right thing at the time. We're definitely glad to be growing up and taking more diligence around creating truly scalable solutions. That example I gave about the shipping system, it worked at the time. Clearly not the backbone of our infrastructure now.
I worked at Amazon briefly, and
Sure.
One of the things that's built into the Amazon culture that they always are talking about is this thriftiness that had to be present from early on in the business, because they're just like, this is a low margin business fundamentally. Do you feel like that thriftiness has gotten built into Soylent's culture?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely think it's served us well. There are, of course, things where you don't want to be thrifty, like employee benefits, pay. We're not asking people to come work for us for less than what they'd be paid elsewhere or anything like that.
Rats in the factory.
We have definitely saved a lot of money over the time, but it's getting a lot better.
Yeah. Engineers love automation, and Wealthfront automates your investing. As a software engineer, there are certain processes that you want to execute no matter what, like integration tests during a build. You wouldn't execute integration tests manually. You would use a continuous integration tool like CodeShip or Jenkins to automate your integration tests. Wealthfront is a tool to automate investing. Just like a continuous integration tool runs your tests automatically, Wealthfront can reinvest your dividends automatically and perform tax loss harvesting automatically. To get your first $15,000 managed by Wealthfront for free, go to wealthfront.com/sedaily and get started with Wealthfront's layer of automation on top of your portfolio. Wealthfront.com/sedaily. Check it out. It would support Software Engineering Daily, and you will get $15,000 managed for free if you sign up. Automate your investing. Get back to the things that you can't automate, like writing code. One of the things I was curious about, you mentioned after the sort of 1.0 crowdfunding and rollout, you sounded like you were convinced that there was a demand there. I'm curious how you knew what percentage of, maybe this is too inside baseball, but like what percentage of the people that had crowdfunded Soylent were buying it on a novelty basis versus people that were actually going to be subscribers that were in it for the long haul? Because I imagine that was influential on how much you wanted to scale up the organization.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So even before we released the first crowdfunding orders, we were running a beta program with our friends and family where we would make the product by hand and ship it to them. And we actually were charging them. So although we recruited from our, first degree, second degree networks, there was a real cost to participating in this, and we wanted to get real feedback. We knew that if we, sent a free bag of the product to somebody's relative, they would probably tell us, "Yeah, it's great," but right. but we wanted to see what people actually did with if they put their money where their mouth was. So we set up a little micro site where we could take e-commerce payments, had a password on it, and really watched what people would do and how much people would order and how frequently they would order. And that allowed us to, first see that subscriptions were clear and obvious, but also kind of eventually use that to scale up demand. And the numbers that have come from that first beta program are still kind of hold true to this day. Like a lot of people that try the product find a great fit with it and stick with it for a long time. If you can effectively build it into kind of your workflow, it really does become a productivity enhancer like any other life hack or productivity tool. It's just something that you rely on. You just assume that it's there. It kind of melts away and makes you a little bit more productive.
Interesting. So if you had the data science infrastructure that you could imagine your most wildest dreams, what are the questions that you would be trying to answer or that you would be able to answer?
There are a lot. I need to think. So there are a lot around kind of just how we grow the business, how much product we order, anticipating. Sorry, the dog is being loud.
That's all right. You got to give it to Soylent. He needs his daily dose of Soylent.
Yes, of course. So
Soylent for dogs sounds like a pretty good startup.
Soylent for dogs. I think that's just dog food.
Right.
I think he's already on the Soylent for Dogs train. But in terms of data, there's so much that we rely on to make data-driven decisions, and we are ever aspirational to increase that across finance, operations, marketing, engineering, product development. We still have a beta program that is large and growing, and we take constant feedback on what we can do better to improve the product. And then I think in the future, we really want to make sure that we're just going deeper into let's use data to drive manufacturing decisions, and then drive ingredient decisions, and then ingredient development decisions, and really push towards a fully informed, data-driven decision chain.
So I'm curious how your strategy, how you're planning your strategy to get to that vision of a real data-driven data science organization. Like I did an interview with a Spotify data scientist recently, and Spotify has gotten to the point they're a mature enough organization where the entire infrastructure is built such that the data really gets ingested in a way that can be queried in a beneficial manner, and there's not as much data cleaning. I think in less mature organizations, sometimes they're just growing, their schema is changing. They have to go through these processes of data cleaning. So I'm curious what your strategy is to mature over time and get towards a situation where the data gets ingested into your system, and then maybe you just have data scientists that can easily and quickly query it, and how do you build that in as a cultural organization?
That's a good point. I mean, we definitely have done a ton of data cleaning and a ton of ETL work to get to where we are, which is pretty much anything that's tied to a customer has been ingested into a database. But there's a lot more that we can do in terms of acquiring data, and I think we're most ambitious about acquiring data about the supply chain and the ingredients, and learning more about what goes into the product at the most fundamental level.
Interesting. So you're trying to break stuff down even further into its constituent
parts. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, with deciding what protein to use, the ratio of various amino acids is important. With deciding what fat to use, the omegas are very important, fatty acids. And these with carbs, it's the glycemic load and glycemic index and the impact on your blood sugar, essentially. So we can make decisions at the higher level of looking at the impact on the human body, but I think we'd eventually like to get to a place where we can look at the fundamentals of the materials that we're using.
Okay, so let's zoom out and talk a little bit about the broader picture, and I want to hear some about your background. But there was a recent Andreessen Horowitz podcast discussing Soylent, and the topic of anti-science came up. Do you think that there's a streak of anti-scientific sentiment in the world today, and do you think that affects sometimes your ability to evangelize Soylent successfully?
That certainly sounds reasonable. I think there are certainly pockets or communities of kind of anti-science evangelists, and there are also communities of pro-science evangelists, and we're hopefully growing the latter faster than the former.
Interesting. I mean, like I consider myself a scientist, certainly, but
sure.
But I sometimes feel like kind of a black sheep among some other scientists, because I think that many of the claims that scientists often want to make are not backed up by enough data to get a causal relationship. There'll be these weekly correlative relationships that'll come out of papers, and then they get blasted in the New York Times as causal relationships. Yeah. And it's like, Nassim Taleb has a term for it. He calls it epistemic arrogance. When you're,
Sure.
you're looking at data and you kind of make these claims that are not really backed up. So when you're looking at data within Soylent and, you say like, okay, Soylent has this observable effect on the body. Therefore, we're going to make this conclusion.
Sure.
How do you avoid epistemic arrogance?
I think probably most importantly is just waiting until you actually have true statistical significance as opposed to just these weak correlative things, and that's why we have yet to release any of that, and we are still studying the effect of the product, and this is not like a 1 month project or even a 1 year project, or this is something that will take years for us to really advance humanity's understanding of nutrition. Is something that it takes decades to get significant breakthroughs in these fields. So I think just understanding the realities of the amount of effort it takes to have a scientific breakthrough and being realistic about that is important. I think if we can get to a point where everyone understands that these things take time, everyone will be better off, as opposed to wanting to rush to some conclusion immediately.
How do you think about testing? Because you conjure up a recipe and you're shipping it out to people. How do you get feedback from people and ensure that the results that you've tested internally extrapolate to the broader consumer population?
Yeah. So, in terms of what's in my domain, we have set up a beta program where we ingest feedback from beta testers, and we have data scientists on staff that do a great job of helping transform that data into actionable results for the product team. But I don't work with it on a daily basis.
Sure. That makes sense. So you studied economics in school. How did you transition to software development? How did you end up being a CTO?
Yeah. So my dad was a software developer, and I'd been developing software since I was a kid. The first website I made was a PHP site for my Counter-Strike team. We would play competitive video games, and we wanted to have a website so that when other teams would face us, they would be aware of us or something like that. So, and then as I went through college, I was using programming as a tool to make economic analysis easier. I eventually worked in finance, where most of what goes on in finance these days is built on the top of great software development. And then once I graduated, I moved out to Silicon Valley and went through Y Combinator and with the Soylent team, and spent several years coding and everything that needed to be coded, essentially.
Right. So from your experience in economics, is there anything unintuitive about the economics of Soylent?
I think unintuitive. I think we're definitely trying to be innovative in the sense that we're breaking the typical constraint around food trade-offs. So it's typically healthy, easy, affordable, pick two. If you want something that's healthy and affordable, grow your own food, it's going to take you a long time. If you don't care about health, you just want easy and cheap, go get fast food. If you want something that's healthy and easy but not affordable, go to a restaurant and have a chef cook you a great meal that's super balanced and to your specifications. So Soylent is supposed to be healthy, and is, in my opinion, healthy, easy, and affordable. So that really breaks that constraint, which is typically present in pretty much everything else I can find.
Interesting. Does Soylent have, as a company, do you interact at all with the other prominent food startups like Hampton Creek or Impossible Foods?
Yeah, we've done several media events with them at various conferences and talks, but beyond that, I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, interesting. How do you think you're?
I think, yeah, I guess I think we're both kind of on a similar path of trying to define what the next generation of food companies looks like. That's fair.
Interesting. Do you cook at all?
I don't. I cooked a Thanksgiving turkey though.
Oh.
But outside of that, it's a pleasurable. I cook out of pleasure when I get around to it, where I have time and want to do that. It's like a social experience. Yeah,
definitely. So how far are we from this vision of having like a faucet for our food, or like a bioreactor that's making our food, or whatever this, this moonshot vision that you guys have?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope very close, obviously, but there's a lot of research to be done, and it will take time, and there's a lot of development, and I think that's okay. As long as it happens, I'm happy. I can't really divulge any timelines, I suppose.
Okay.
I'm just not at liberty to say anything.
Yeah, sure. To begin to close off, what are the software challenges, the software engineering challenges that you're facing day to day right now? Yeah,
so software is extremely exciting in our business. There's so much opportunity to improve what we do, how we do things, give people in the organization the tools that they need to do their jobs more efficiently, as well as our customers automate what they need so that they can get basically anything they want done immediately, very quickly. There are data challenges all over the organization, as well as user experience challenges. We are trying to really design a world-class e-commerce experience that can really push forward what that experience is. But it's an incredibly challenging space, given that Amazon is there, and there are plenty of companies that do what they do very well. But we're really excited about what we have coming in 2016. Cool.
Well, John, thanks so much for coming on to Software Engineering Daily. It's been really interesting talking to you about Soylent and all the engineering challenges around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.